Hey, welcome everybody to Fox Soul's Black Report, your space for black news, views, and opinions. Today is Monday, March 7th. I'm Seth Lemon.
I'm Blue Toulouse.
I'm Romeo.
I'm Demi Lobo, and on today's report, it's been 57 years since Bloody Sunday, how Vice President Harris and other black officials choose to commemorate the defining civil rights march. Meanwhile, as African refugees in Ukraine continue reporting racist incidents, black students are taking rescue efforts into their own hands using Instagram. Then, why U.S. lawmakers say it will be very difficult to get WNBA star and Olympian Brittany Griner out of Russia.
Plus, we continue highlighting black change makers during this Women's History Month as Congress takes on the issue of missing women of color. And the baby is yet again caught in the controversy, while some are protesting his planned return to the festival stage at Rolling Loud, Miami. So, mates, we have all of that and so much more. It is our voice and our truth. So let's get it.
Today marks the 57th anniversary of Bloody Sunday, a defining moment in the fight for civil and voting rights here in the United States. On March 7th, 1965, white state troopers attacked black voting rights marchers led by late Congressman John Lewis as they tried to cross the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma, Alabama. The images of the violence there, it led to the passage of the Voting Rights Act. But the U.S. Supreme Court gutted a portion of the law back in 2013 requiring states with a history of voting discrimination to get Justice Department approval before they made any changes to how their elections are held. Now, yesterday, Vice President Kamala Harris, she crossed the Edmund Pettus Bridge with Martin Luther King III and other voting rights activists. It comes as Senate Democrats continue trying to pass new legislation that will protect voting rights in this country. And on such a momentous occasion, such a pivotal day in our nation's history, it was great to see the very first black vice president going across the bridge. Of course, she was in Congress with the late congressman, John Lewis, and the bill that has his name on it still has not been passed, even despite all the promises, all the efforts, and all the push in Congress with that slim majority that we got.
You know, 57 years, when you, off the top of the tongue, it seems like it was such a long time ago. It's not ancient history. 57 years was not that long ago. And so that's why activists are calling for us to recommit ourselves to working to secure our rights so that future generations don't have to go through what we're looking at right now. And so the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, they tweeted a few action steps of how you can be involved. First, they said to vote in every single election. They put in capital every single election, and of course show up to town halls and school board meetings as well.
And you know, I just want to add these two things. 57 years later, this march is still carrying a lot of weight, right? We still have a lot of work to do, a long way to go. And it's a reminder of what the Biden administration has not done, what they promised to do, right? So we have these things to take in consideration as we watch this happen yesterday.
As the vice president and voting rights activists commemorate Bloody Sunday, less and less of black people in Selma are voting. Turnout in the 2020 presidential election in Selma and in surrounding Dallas County was only 57%. That was among the worst turnout number in Alabama. Voting rights activists say some of it can be blamed on voters who didn't see the point. They say they can't make change in a state dominated by white Republican lawmakers, but some blame black leaders in Selma for the low turnout. Residents believe local politicians ignore high crime rates and bad government services in the majorly African American city.
We now move to the latest in Ukraine, entering the third week of the invasion of Russia into the Eastern European country. Moscow pummeling civilian targets, and we have a warning about this video that you're about to see. You may find it disturbing. You see that explosion there as airstrikes hit civilian targets in urban areas Sunday. 2 children killed in that attack. Russian and Ukrainian officials agreed to a temporary ceasefire, but Russia, they did not maintain that agreement. The Kremlin ramped up their attacks again. Officials say Russia's targeted residential areas, killing unarmed civilians. Russia is continuing to deny, though, that they're targeting unarmed people. In Kyiv, there's a 40-mile Russian artillery convoy slowly approaching from all directions, but apparently it's still stalled. Ukraine's president, He's pleading for more help from NATO allies, calling for a no-fly zone over the country and also calling for more planes to be delivered there. The UN estimates that 1.5 million Ukrainians have fled the country and says that 360 Ukrainians have died so far. The actual death toll believed to be much higher. President Zelensky, he was asking for more jets, more airspace fighting capabilities, because he believes that that's the next front that they're going to have to combat. And he's saying they don't want any American soldiers on the ground. They're not asking for us to join in their fight, but they are asking for the equipment that they feel they're going to need to ward off Moscow's attacks.
You know, at the end of the day, when this is all said and done, with innocent lives being taken, I hope that Putin can look back and say, what did I get from this? Innocent people. There's a woman who was delivering dog food to a dog shelter who died over the weekend just trying to do something good and help out animals in Ukraine. And so I just don't know what is going to be the end result when all these innocent people have lost their lives.
It's very disturbing as we watch what happened over the last 7 to 8 days. At the end of the day, I will tell you this. How is he going to be able to live with himself? Because there's people within his camp that's around him that's too scared to speak up. What he is doing is so wrong in a lot of ways. His promises of keeping kids safe and schools safe, it's not happening. Some are saying it's frustration from Putin not achieving what he thought he would have achieved by now, right, when he went into Ukraine. So as we move forward, this is not a good look for Putin and those of Russia, and they have to stand up against him at some point. Meanwhile, the Nigerian government is planning to airlift 1,000 of its citizens stranded in Ukraine. 3 jets chartered by the Nigerian government are expected to leave Wednesday to pick up students who have fled to nearby Poland, Romania, and Hungary. Now, Hungary has taken in a number of Ghanaian students who fled Ukraine. Hungarian officials say they will help the students continue their education at universities in their country. More than 1,000 Ghanaian students were living in Ukraine until the Russian invasion. Though 7,000 of them have crossed the border into neighboring countries, some of the students don't want to go back to Ghana because of uncertainty of the future of their education. Last week, hundreds of African immigrants were stopped at Ukraine's border to Poland as they tried to escape the fight. African students go to college in Eastern Europe because it is cheaper than attending school in Western Europe and the U.S. We all saw what happened initially, what went viral, how they were trying to get on the trains to escape like everyone else, and they were treated as if we were back in the days of slavery. We saw that. Even in the midst of people trying to escape and get out of Ukraine, we're all on the same page. We're all trying to save our own lives. Black African Americans were pushed back. They were not allowed in. People of color was disrespected. So to see that happen, even in that moment, is kind of hard to take in.
And, you know, that's why I was so excited to see the African refugees taking this into their own hands. There were some who were they had their own cars and were able to get toward the border to get to safety. And there's this one gentleman NBC talked to that said he left his valuables and decided to take people, his friends instead, and was using Instagram to be able to communicate with them to see, you know, who needed help to be picked up. So instead of taking his own things, he was driving people to the border, dropping them off, and turning right back around and going to get more folks.
Seth, I'm so happy that you brought that up. It was literally at the top of my mind because I thought that was such a beautiful moment for him to say, selfless, a selfless gentleman that cares more about making sure that our people are taken care of. And so social media has been very, very helpful for helping out people. Trending right now is Africans in Ukraine and Black in Ukraine are on Instagram, on Twitter. And so if there's anyone out there that would like to help, those 2 hashtags are on Instagram and Twitter. And so you can join the fight as well.
And I think this also underscores the fact that when the world catches a cold, the Black community gets the flu. And so what's happening to Ukraine is ugly, but what's happening to the Africans in the midst of this war is even uglier. And so this is exactly why we often have to take care of ourselves, even during ethnic cleansing and war and other kind of tragedies.
Very well said.
Well, Republican Senators Marco Rubio and Steve Daines are coming under fierce criticism for sharing photos from a virtual meeting between Ukrainian President Zelensky and senators. Zelensky reportedly asked senators not to share the photos of the Zoom call for security reasons, and Rubio and Daines shared the photos of the meeting Saturday anyways on Twitter with captions indicating that they were on the call as it was happening. The men are defending themselves and saying that the post didn't jeopardize Zelensky's security.
WNBA star Brittany Griner is being held in Russia. This is a surveillance video of the former Baylor star from Houston as she was arrested last month at a Russian airport for allegedly having a vaping device with cannabis oil. Democratic Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee of Houston is demanding her release. She also spoke to the State Department for help in getting Griner back to the U.S., although Russian state media says Griner faces up to 10 years in prison if convicted.
Democrats and Republicans on Capitol Hill are gearing up for a showdown on COVID-19 relief that's going to happen this week. House Democrats planning to introduce a massive spending bill as soon as tomorrow, and it includes roughly $10 billion to help Ukraine. But it also tacks on about $22.5 billion in COVID relief money that Republicans widely oppose. Now, opposing the bill, it would put Republicans in a tough spot, essentially daring them to block a package that includes aid money for Ukraine. But the pressure is on both parties to secure a deal before this Friday, when the government, as you know, could potentially run out of funding. If no decisions made quickly, lawmakers may be forced to pass just another short-term stopgap funding measure to avoid a total shutdown.
The U.S. Supreme Court will not take up the sexual assault case against Bill Cosby. That means his conviction is tossed and he'll remain free from prison. The prosecution had asked the High Court to hear the case and reinstate his conviction. The 84-year-old, he became the first celebrity convicted during the Me Too era. He spent 3 years in prison on charges of drugging and sexually assaulting Andrea Constant back in 2004.
Switching gears, a group of black business organizations are endorsing Supreme Court nominee Ketanji Brown Jackson. The U.S. Black Chambers are urging the Senate to quickly confirm Jackson. The group represents black-owned businesses around the nation. They wrote a letter to Senate Judiciary leaders highlighting Jackson's diverse experience of public service. Here's on Jackson's nomination began March 21st.
Meanwhile, Judge Jackson may be making some headway in getting bipartisan support for her confirmation to the High Court. GOP Senator Rick Scott says he is willing to consider voting for President Biden's nominee, and Scott says he is looking forward to meeting with Jackson to discuss her view of her role in the judiciary branch. The senator says if Jackson can prove to him that she would stick to interpreting the law and try not to make new laws from the bench, then he would vote to confirm her.
An Idaho man who hit a U.S. Capitol police officer with a metal pipe during the insurrection is being sentenced to 4 years in prison. Duke Edward Wilson will spend a little more than 4 years behind bars. During sentencing on Friday, Wilson told U.S. District Judge Royce Lambeth that he didn't remember any of his actions. Prosecutors say he attacked at least 3 officers during the January 6th attacks.
Florida is one step closer to creating the first ever election police force. The state Senate passed a voting law package that was pushed by Governor Ron DeSantis. DeSantis proposed the need for an election police unit based on President Trump's lies about mass election fraud in the country. Critics say there's no need for the force. President Trump won Florida in 2020 election, right? The new force would investigate fraud allegations, and the governor says he will sign the bill when it reaches his desk.
A coroner's report says a black man in Ohio died after he was shot 20 times by police. Now, this was at a Columbus hospital emergency room back in 2021. Check out this police body cam footage of the incident. Officers say a struggle with Miles Jackson started when they discovered he had a gun in his sweatpants. Investigators say cops tased Jackson during the struggle, trying to take the weapon, but that's when they say the gun went off. It hit Jackson in the leg, but he refused to give up the gun, according to officers, who also say they fired on Jackson when he then pointed the weapon at them. The coroner listed the cause of death as homicide. The state's attorney general's office has not decided if any of those officers should be charged, but investigators say Jackson was taken to the hospital after collapsing in a parking lot. A report says an officer failed to finish a pat down of Jackson before transporting him to the hospital. The video there is quite disturbing, and it's one of those incidents where if police had done their due diligence, it seems during, the preliminary matters, then we could have avoided a loss of life overall.
Absolutely. People are comparing these police officers to a firing squad, and that just hearing those words together with this are very disturbing. And just to know that a black man went to the hospital, and that's the place where you feel that you're going to be safer, and you still end up dying in such a tragic manner. And so, Seth, back to you saying is if the police did what they were supposed to do in the beginning, because there are so many conflicting reports about how people feel about this. Even myself, when I first watched it, I'm like, okay, well, he pointed a gun at the police. How do you kind of justify that? But going back to the very beginning of the police would have done what they were supposed to do right in the very beginning, we would not have even gotten to this part in the hospital.
We would not have, and I'm hearing that his left arm was handcuffed to the bed. Not sure if we can see that in the video, if that was true or not. That's what's in some of the stories they were saying. But we're talking 20 shots, Was that even necessary? If you feel like you are protecting yourself, you have a man that's surrounded by police officers, right, that's allegedly handcuffed to the bed already, and you didn't do your job right in the beginning, and he lost his life because of that. Someone has to be accountable for this situation because it continues to happen on so many levels and it ends up happening to black people, and that's a problem.
This begs the question, though, what's the point of the body cam? I thought the whole point of having that camera was to dissuade officers from using excessive force. It feels like we just now have a bigger audience to watch them still flagrantly abuse their power.
Yeah.
Protesters took to the streets of Louisville over the weekend. They are angry with the acquittal of Brett Hankinson, the former cop who was acquitted on Thursday of wanton endangerment in the raid that ended in Breonna Taylor's death. Protesters held rallies in downtown Louisville condemning the acquittal. Hankinson fired the shots that entered the apartment next door to Taylor's. Activists say once again the criminal justice system has failed black people.
People still want freedom, and we still want the judicial process to do what's right. We still want to stand on the right side of history. All the examples we have all over this nation during this time where policing has caused so many problems and has been acting as an unchecked power. You have people who take that courage to stand up out in these streets time and time again. And then when we rely on our justice system to finish the job, it fails us again.
Hankinson is the only cop to go on trial following the Kentucky Attorney General's probe of Taylor's death, and Taylor's family members say that they hope the Department of Justice probe of the shooting will bring charges against the officers involved in Breonna's death.
Teaching critical race theory in Mississippi is being limited by state lawmakers. The state's legislature passed a bill on Friday that would put restraints on classroom discussions about the harmful effects racism has had on American society. Black lawmakers spoke out harshly against the bill during a 6-hour debate Friday. The Republican-controlled State House voted 75-43 to pass the bill, which now goes to Governor Tate Reeves, who says he will sign the bill into law.
3 Houston area school aides are looking for new jobs after they were fired for standing by and just watching as a much larger middle school student severely attacked a special needs student. Now, this beating had happened after the 11-year-old accidentally bumped into the larger kid at the Aldine, Texas middle school. School officials there, they say the smaller child has the developmental skills of about a 3 or 4-year-old, and his attacker also suffers from intellectual disabilities. The 11-year-old girl's grandmother, Veda Cavett, says the child has been traumatized since this incident.